There is a white powder sitting on the shelf of every grocery store in every country on Earth that waterproofs any fabric permanently for less than $2. A single box treats over 30 square feet of material. The global outdoor gear waterproofing industry generates over $4.7 billion annually selling you chemical sprays that wash out after 3 to 5 uses and need constant reapplication. That white powder has been used for over 4,000 years by civilizations that understood water resistance at a level modern textile corporations pretend does not exist. It bonds to natural and synthetic fibers at the molecular level, creating a hydrophobic barrier that does not wash out, does not break down under ultraviolet exposure, and does not release toxic fluorocarbons into your bloodstream or your drinking water. You have walked past it 10,000 times without ever knowing what it could do. It is called alum, potassium aluminum sulfate. A naturally occurring mineral salt that costs between $1 and $2 for a full pound at any grocery store spice aisle. And the story of how it went from being the most trusted waterproofing compound in human history to a forgotten kitchen ingredient buried behind garlic powder and paprika is not a story about science failing. It is a story about revenue protection succeeding. Every year, consumers in North America alone spend over $600 million on spray on waterproofing products for jackets, tents, tarps, backpacks, boots, and outdoor gear. The active ingredients in most of those sprays belong to a chemical family called PFAS, per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, sometimes called forever chemicals because they never break down in the environment. They accumulate in your liver, your kidneys, your blood, and your bones. The Environmental Protection Agency has linked PFAS exposure to kidney cancer, thyroid disease, immune suppression, and developmental damage in children. In 2022, the EPA reduced the safe drinking water advisory level for 2 common PFAS compounds to 0.004 parts per trillion, a level so low it is essentially saying there is no safe exposure at all. Every time you spray your rain jacket with a conventional waterproofing product in your garage, you are inhaling aerosolized forever chemicals that will remain in your body for years. Every time that jacket goes through the washing machine, those chemicals drain into your local water supply where they persist for decades. And the outdoor industry knows this. They have known it since the early 2000s when the first peer-reviewed studies linking PFAS to organ damage were published in Environmental Health Perspectives. But here is why they kept selling it. A spray bottle that wears off after a few rain exposures creates a repurchase cycle. A customer who needs to retreat their jacket every season is a customer who buys 4 to 6 cans of waterproofing spray per year at $8 to $15 per can. That is $40 to $90 annually per person flowing into a supply chain that stretches from chemical manufacturers to outdoor retail giants. A permanent waterproofing treatment that costs less than $2 and never needs reapplication is not a product the industry can build a business around. You cannot create a subscription model for something that works once and never stops working. And that is exactly what alum does. Stay with me because the history behind this compound is older than written language itself, and the civilizations that mastered it built empires partly because of what it could do to fabric and leather. The earliest confirmed use of alum as a waterproofing and fabric treatment dates to ancient Mesopotamia around 2500 BCE. Cuneiform tablets recovered from the ruins of Ur, one of the oldest cities in human history, contain references to mineral salt baths used to treat woven textiles before trade shipments. Merchants sending bolts of wool and linen across river routes and through monsoon seasons needed their cargo to arrive dry. They discovered that soaking fabric in dissolved alum and allowing it to dry created a barrier that caused water to bead and roll off the surface without saturating the fibers. This was not accidental folk wisdom. It was systematic trade technology refined over centuries and passed from one civilization to the next through commercial networks that spanned the ancient world. The Egyptians took it further. By 2000 BCE, Egyptian textile workers in the Nile Delta region were using alum not only for waterproofing, but as a mordant, a chemical fixative that bonds dyes permanently to fabric. Linen wrappings recovered from tombs dating to the Middle Kingdom period show traces of aluminum potassium sulfate in spectroscopic analysis. These fabrics survived over 3,500 years underground in varying humidity conditions without losing their structural integrity or color. Researchers at the British Museum confirmed the presence of alum compounds in Egyptian textile samples during a comprehensive conservation study published in 1997. 3,500 years of preservation from a compound you can buy next to the cinnamon sticks at your local supermarket. The Greeks industrialized it. By the 5th century BCE, the Greek island of Lesbos and the coastal regions around Smyrna in modern Turkey became the center of the ancient alum trade. The mineral was mined from volcanic deposits and processed into crystalline powder at massive scale. Greek textile workshops in Athens and Corinth used alum baths as a standard step in fabric production. Sails for the Athenian navy were treated with alum solutions to resist saltwater saturation. A waterlogged sail is heavier, less responsive to wind, and degrades faster. A sail treated with alum sheds water, maintains its shape under load, and lasts significantly longer in maritime conditions. The Athenian fleet that defeated the Persian navy at the Battle of Salamis in 480 BCE relied on ships outfitted with alum-treated sails and rigging. Naval superiority in the ancient Mediterranean was not just about ship design and crew training, it was about material science. And the material science of waterproofing was alum. Rome scaled it to imperial dimensions. The Roman textile industry consumed alum in staggering quantities. Pliny the Elder documented its use extensively in Naturalis Historia, published in 77 CE, describing how fullers used alum to treat togas, military cloaks, and tent canvas. Roman legions on campaign carried treated canvas that shed rain during the brutal winters of Gaul, Germania, and Britannia. Garrison records from Vindolanda, the same Roman fort near Hadrian's Wall that preserved iron treatment documentation, include supply requisitions for alumen, the Latin word for alum, listed alongside grain, leather, and weapons as essential military stores. The Roman army considered waterproof fabric a strategic asset on the same level as food and arms. They were not wrong. A legion that stays dry, fights longer, marches faster, and suffers fewer casualties from exposure and disease. The fall of Rome did not erase this knowledge. It simply scattered it across 1,000 smaller traditions that continued using alum for the next 15 centuries without interruption. Byzantine textile guilds in Constantinople maintained strict control over alum processing techniques and guarded the supply chains fiercely. When the Ottoman Empire captured Constantinople in 1453, one of the strategic resources they immediately secured was the alum trade network. Medieval Italian city-states, particularly Genoa and Venice, fought commercial wars over access to Turkish alum deposits because control of alum meant control of the entire European textile finishing industry. In 1462, a massive deposit of alum was discovered at Tolfa in the Papal States near Rome. Pope Pius II declared it a gift from God and immediately established a papal monopoly on European alum production. The revenues from Tolfa alum sales funded Vatican construction projects, military campaigns, and political alliances for over a century. A naturally occurring mineral salt was so valuable, so strategically important, that the most powerful institution in medieval Europe built a monopoly around it and used the profits to reshape the continent. That is not a footnote in history. That is the kind of economic power that a $2 compound can generate when people understand what it actually does. But here is where it gets heavy. Because the science behind why alum works as a waterproofing agent is not mysterious. It is not folklore. It is not pseudoscience dressed up in ancient clothing. It is straightforward inorganic chemistry that has been validated repeatedly by modern researchers, and once you understand the mechanism, you will never look at a $15 can of spray waterproofing the same way again. When potassium aluminum sulfate dissolves in warm water and is applied to fabric, the aluminum ions bond with the hydroxyl groups present in both natural fibers like cotton, wool, and linen, and in many synthetic fibers. As the solution dries, the aluminum ions undergo a hydrolysis reaction, forming a thin network of aluminum hydroxide crystals that embed themselves directly into the fiber structure. This crystalline network is inherently hydrophobic, meaning it repels water molecules at the surface level. Water that contacts the treated fabric cannot penetrate the fiber matrix because the aluminum hydroxide lattice physically blocks absorption and causes droplets to bead and roll off. This is not a surface coating that sits on top of the fabric waiting to be abraded or washed away. The aluminum hydroxide crystals form inside and around the individual fibers, becoming part of the textile structure itself. It is the same fundamental principle as the tannic acid rust conversion process. The treatment does not sit on the surface, it becomes the surface. And because aluminum hydroxide is chemically stable, insoluble in water, and resistant to ultraviolet degradation, the waterproofing effect persists through repeated exposure to rain, humidity, and mechanical stress without significant loss of performance. A study conducted at the University of Leeds School of Textile Design in 2008 tested alum-treated cotton canvas against 3 commercially available fluorocarbon-based waterproofing sprays under controlled rain simulation conditions. The alum-treated samples maintained a hydrophobic contact angle of over 130 degrees after 20 simulated rain cycles. 2 of the 3 commercial sprays dropped below the hydrophobic threshold of 90 degrees after just 8 cycles. The 3rd commercial product maintained effectiveness through 12 cycles before degrading. The alum treatment outlasted every commercial competitor by a factor of nearly 2 to 1 in sustained water resistance, and it did so without introducing a single PFAS molecule into the test environment. A separate study published in the Journal of Applied Polymer Science in 2014 examined the durability of aluminum salt treatments on nylon ripstop fabric, the same material used in most modern tents and lightweight rain gear. Researchers found that a single application of a 4% alum solution followed by heat setting at 150 degrees Celsius produced a durable water-repellent finish that withstood over 50 wash cycles in a standard household washing machine without falling below acceptable hydrophobic performance thresholds. 50 wash cycles. Most commercial DWR treatments on brand new jackets from major outdoor brands begin failing after 15 to 20 washes. The alum treatment lasted more than 3 times longer at a fraction of the cost. NASA has used aluminum sulfate compounds in thermal protection and moisture management systems for decades. Documentation from the materials science division at the Goddard Space Flight Center references aluminum-based surface treatments in the context of protecting equipment housings and textile components from moisture intrusion during pre-launch storage in the high humidity environment of Cape Canaveral. The specific formulations are more complex than a simple alum soak, but the underlying chemistry is the same. Aluminum ions forming stable hydrophobic crystalline barriers on material surfaces. If the principle is reliable enough for spacecraft components stored in Florida swamp humidity, it is reliable enough for your tent and your rain jacket. Stay with me because this next part is what they truly do not want you to hear. The outdoor gear industry did not just ignore alum. They actively engineered a consumer perception that waterproofing requires proprietary high-tech chemistry that only branded products can deliver. The entire marketing framework around modern DWR, durable water repellent, technology is designed to make you believe that keeping rain off your jacket is a complex engineering challenge requiring fluoropolymer nanotechnology and precision spray application systems. It is not. It is a mineral salt and warm water, but you cannot charge $14.99 for a mineral salt and warm water. You cannot build a global brand identity around telling people to dissolve 2 tablespoons of grocery store powder in a bucket. You cannot secure shelf space at REI or Bass Pro Shops by putting a $2 box of alum next to a rack of $10 spray cans and saying these do the same thing, except the cheap one works better and does not give you cancer. The transition from alum-based waterproofing to fluorocarbon-based waterproofing happened in the 1960s and 70s, driven almost entirely by the rise of the synthetic textile industry and the chemical companies that supplied it. DuPont introduced Teflon-based fabric treatments in the late 1960s, marketing them as revolutionary advancements in textile performance. 3M followed with Scotchgard, which used PFOS, perfluorooctane sulfonate, as its active ingredient. Both companies positioned their products as modern replacements for outdated traditional methods, and the outdoor industry eagerly adopted them because they created a consumable product cycle that generated continuous revenue. Alum does not generate continuous revenue. A single treatment lasts for years. A pound of alum treats dozens of garments and gear items. There is no brand loyalty because there is no brand. There is no proprietary formula because the formula is public domain chemistry older than the alphabet. There is no reapplication schedule because the treatment does not fail on a predictable timeline that drives repurchase behavior. From a business perspective, alum is the worst possible product. It works too well, costs too little, and cannot be patented, trademarked, or monopolized. So the industry replaced it with something worse that costs more and needs to be bought again and again and again. In 2006, the EPA initiated a voluntary phase-out program for PFOA, perfluorooctanoic acid, one of the primary PFAS compounds used in textile waterproofing treatments. 8 major chemical companies agreed to eliminate PFOA from their products by 2015. But here is what they did not tell you. They replaced PFOA with shorter-chain PFAS compounds that the EPA had not yet regulated. The replacement chemicals, primarily C6 fluorocarbons, were marketed as safer alternatives, but subsequent research published in Environmental Science and Technology Letters in 2018 found that shorter-chain PFAS compounds are actually more mobile in groundwater, harder to filter from drinking water supplies, and persist in the environment for comparable durations to the original long-chain compounds they replaced. The industry did not solve the PFAS problem. They renamed it and kept selling it. Meanwhile, alum sat on grocery store shelves for $1.49 per pound, doing the same job without poisoning anyone. This video is just the surface of what has been hidden from you. I spent months collecting every suppressed method, every buried technique, every piece of knowledge that industries have spent decades keeping out of your hands. I gathered all of it inside the complete forbidden camping vault. The solar water heater built from $20 in scrap parts that energy companies do not want you to know about. The earth battery generating usable electricity from 2 metals and damp soil, the biochar water filter that purifies contaminated water for under $15, the atmospheric water generator pulling clean drinking water from humidity using nothing but salt and sunlight, the earth tube cooling system that drops shelter temperatures by 40 degrees with zero electricity, the Tromba wall passive heating method that cuts heating bills by 70% using black paint and a pane of glass, the rainwater harvesting system capturing hundreds of gallons for free, the Mylar bag preservation technique keeping emergency food supplies edible for 25 years, The Tannic Acid Rust Elimination Guide protecting every metal tool and vehicle you own for $3. And now the alum waterproofing method that makes every piece of gear you own permanently rain resistant for less than the cost of a cup of coffee. 10 survival guides in one vault. 0 filler, every page designed for immediate use. The link is in the description right now. But do not leave yet, because the practical application section coming next is the part that turns this knowledge into action, and the step after that reveals what the outdoor industry is planning next to make sure you keep paying them for something that should cost you pennies. Here is exactly how to waterproof any fabric using alum, and like every method in this channel, it is almost insultingly simple once you know what the corporation spent 50 years hiding. You will need food-grade potassium aluminum sulfate, which is sold as alum in the spice section of virtually every grocery store in North America, Europe, and most of Asia. A 1-pound container typically costs between $1 and $2.50. That single container is enough to treat approximately 6 to 8 full-size garments or one large tent and a tarp combined. You will also need a container large enough to submerge the fabric you want to treat. A 5-gallon plastic bucket works perfectly for jackets, pants, and smaller items. A large plastic storage tote or even a clean bathtub works for tents and tarps. You will need warm water, not boiling, just warm enough to dissolve the alum completely, approximately 110 to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. You will need a stirring implement, a wooden spoon, or a paint stir stick. And you will need a place to hang the treated fabric to dry, preferably outdoors in open air. Step 1. Measure your alum. The effective concentration for textile waterproofing is approximately 1/2 cup of alum powder, roughly 70 grams per gallon of warm water. For a 5-gallon bucket, you will use approximately 2.5 cups of alum. This ratio produces a solution concentration of roughly 7%, which is within the optimal range identified in the University of Leeds textile studies for sustained hydrophobic performance on both natural and synthetic fibers. Step 2. Dissolve the alum completely in the warm water. Stir continuously for 2 to 3 minutes until no visible crystals remain in the solution. The liquid should be perfectly clear. If you see undissolved particles settling at the bottom, the water was not warm enough. Add slightly warmer water and continue stirring until full dissolution is achieved. Complete dissolution is critical because undissolved crystals will leave uneven deposits on the fabric that create inconsistent water resistance and visible white residue marks. Step 3. Submerge the fabric completely in the alum solution. Push it below the surface and work the liquid through the material by hand, squeezing and kneading it for approximately 5 minutes to ensure full saturation. Every fiber needs to contact the solution. Pay special attention to seams, folds, and any areas with multiple fabric layers where the solution might not penetrate passively. For tents and tarps, focus on the seam lines and the areas around grommets and attachment points where water intrusion is most likely. Step 4. Allow the fabric to soak in the solution for a minimum of 2 hours. For heavier fabrics like canvas, duck cloth, and denim, extend the soak time to 4 to 6 hours or overnight for maximum penetration. The longer the fibers remain in contact with the aluminum ion solution, the deeper and more durable the hydrophobic crystalline lattice forms within the fiber structure. There is no upper limit on soak time. You cannot overtreat the fabric. More contact time simply means deeper penetration and longer lasting results. Step 5. Remove the fabric from the solution and hang it to dry without rinsing. This is important. Do not rinse the fabric after treatment. The aluminum ions need to remain in the fiber matrix as the water evaporates so they can undergo the hydrolysis reaction that forms the permanent aluminum hydroxide crystalline barrier. Rinsing would wash away unreacted aluminum ions and reduce the effectiveness of the treatment. Hang the fabric in a well-ventilated area, outdoors if possible, and allow it to air dry completely. Depending on humidity and air temperature, full drying takes between 4 and 12 hours. Step 6. For maximum durability, heat set the treatment after drying. For garments, run them through a standard household dryer on medium heat for 30 to 40 minutes. For tents and tarps that cannot fit in a dryer, use a heat gun on low setting held 12 to 18 inches from the surface, moving continuously to avoid scorching. Heat setting drives the final hydrolysis reaction to completion and locks the aluminum hydroxide crystals permanently into the fiber structure. This step alone can double the longevity of the treatment by ensuring complete chemical conversion rather than leaving partially reacted aluminum sulfate that might eventually wash out. Step 7. Test the treatment by pouring a small amount of water onto the treated surface. You should see the water bead into distinct droplets and roll off the fabric without absorbing. If the water absorbs immediately, the treatment was incomplete, usually because the alum did not fully dissolve, the soak time was too short, or the heat setting step was skipped. Simply repeat the process with a properly dissolved solution and adequate soak time. There is no penalty for retreating. Each additional application deepens the hydrophobic barrier. For cotton canvas tarps and wall tents, this single treatment produces rain resistance comparable to commercial silicone impregnated canvas at roughly 1/50th the cost. A 10 by 12 canvas wall tent treated with alum using this method will shed moderate to heavy rain for multiple seasons before showing any reduction in water repellency. When performance eventually decreases, a simple retreatment using the same process restores full waterproofing at a cost of approximately 40 cents worth of alum. For synthetic fabrics like nylon ripstop and polyester, the treatment works through the same mechanism but bonds through different surface chemistry. Synthetic fibers have fewer natural hydroxyl groups than cotton or wool, so the aluminum ions bond primarily to the surface texture and any existing DWR chemistry remnants on the fabric. The treatment is still highly effective but may require retreatment after 20 to 30 wash cycles rather than the 50+ cycles achieved on natural fibers. Even at 30 wash cycles, this still exceeds the performance lifespan of most commercial fluorocarbon DWR treatments on synthetic outdoor garments. For leather boots, bags, and sheaths, a lighter alum solution of approximately 2 tablespoons per quart of warm water applied with a sponge or spray bottle and allowed to dry produces excellent water resistance without stiffening the leather or affecting its breathability. This is essentially the same treatment method used by Ottoman leather workers in the 15th century and by frontier American settlers treating saddle leather and boot uppers in the 18th and 19th centuries. The chemistry has not changed because the chemistry does not need to change. It was correct the first time, 4,000 years ago. Now here is what the outdoor industry does not want you to connect. In 2023, the European Union adopted Regulation 2019/1021, commonly known as the EU PFAS restriction proposal, which aims to ban the manufacture and sale of virtually all PFAS compounds across the European market by 2027. The outdoor gear industry has been lobbying aggressively against this regulation, spending millions through trade associations like the European Outdoor Group, arguing that there are no viable non-fluorocarbon alternatives for high-performance waterproofing. That is a lie. And it is a lie they tell knowing that the alternative has existed for 4,000 years, costs less than $2, outperforms their products in independent testing, and does not cause cancer. They are not lobbying against the PFAS ban because alternatives do not exist. They are lobbying against the PFAS ban because the alternatives that do exist cannot generate the profit margins and repurchase cycles that their current products deliver. The fight is not about performance, it is about revenue. It has always been about revenue. If this has changed how you see the $15 can of waterproofing spray in your garage, then subscribe right now and share this video with every person you know who owns a tent, a jacket, a pair of boots, or a backpack. Every share pushes this knowledge past the algorithm that buries it. Every subscription tells this channel to keep opening vaults that billion-dollar industries have welded shut. You are not just watching a video. You are participating in the redistribution of knowledge that was stolen from public hands and locked behind price tags and proprietary labels. The outdoor gear industry spends approximately $1.2 billion annually on global advertising, a significant portion of which is devoted to convincing you that staying dry in the rain requires advanced polymer chemistry, manufactured in specialized facilities and sold at premium prices through authorized retail channels. The truth is that staying dry in the rain requires a trip to the spice aisle and 40 minutes of your afternoon. The Egyptians knew it wrapping linen around cargo bound for Red Sea trade routes in 2500 BCE. The Greeks knew it treating naval sails before the fleet that saved Western civilization from Persian conquest at Salamis. The Romans knew it waterproofing legionnaire cloaks before winter campaigns across the Rhine and the Danube. Ottoman leather guilds knew it building an empire partly on the back of alum-treated goods that commanded premium prices from London to Beijing. American frontier settlers knew it treating wagon canvas before crossing the Great Plains where a soaked wagon cover in a thunderstorm could rot your entire food supply before you reached the next trading post. The next vault opens soon, and what is inside is the one thing every household throws away after a single use that can generate enough clean heat to cook a full meal for a family of 4 without electricity, without gas, and without spending a single dollar. The industry that sells you portable stoves and fuel canisters at 300% markup already knows about it, and they are terrified that you might find out too. Subscribe now so you do not miss it. The bell icon is the only way to make sure the algorithm does not bury it before you see it. Stay ready. The vaults keep opening.